Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. I'm happy to be part of the meeting and to see determined people who are willing to change the welfare of their communities. For the past 30 years, I have been working with grassroots communities in Kenya, especially those working in what they call the informal sector. The informal sector is the traders, artisans, peasants, herders, fishmongers, and all that. And these people, we were trying to find out how we could transform them to become entrepreneurs. We would go out asking questions like, are they entrepreneurs or plodding along? We would ask them, what were their problems? They would tell us finance, policy, lack of space, and all that. And then I realized after about 10 years of working and doing that kind of research, I went to one market in Mombasa. And at the market, I found a group of women who were trading in rice. And one of the traders was my former high school schoolmate. She was a rice trader after she was sacked from the job because of structural adjustments. And structural adjustments were the changes that were introduced by the World Bank and IMF with the hope of transforming the African economies. They recommended the reduction of jobs, they recommended cost sharing, they recommended floating of the exchange rates. And many people lost their jobs, and what they did was to turn to the informal sector to try and make a living. So when I met this lady, she was willing to open to me about how they carry out their trade, which, unlike other researchers, were not willing to do. She told me about how they improve their economies of scale for small businesses. What they do is that they package the rice in similar packages so that they can sell to supermarkets. They also brand the rice so that they can trade in, they can have a common brand which sells because of quality. So in this case, the women were trying to do something that large companies do, but improving their status by trading together. She also told me that they set rules about how to clean the rice before sale. The way they do the rules is that you should not trade, you should not clean the rice outside the market. One should wear an apron and be clean. So they had all these rules they had set among themselves. They should clean their hands. They should take care of themselves, of the hygiene, so that they can pack the rice. They had also the rules of how they should not undercut each other on the price of selling price of the rice. So they had a uniform selling price. In this way, they sold the rice as a group, and they benefited from being a group. In the other thing they said about the rules is the behavior of each of the women. They organized that because most of the women were coming from up country, they should not sleep in hotels. Each one of them should have a home in Mombasa, and when she goes up country, she should just close the door, go up country and come back so that they'll be able to bring their children at the market. Then the other thing they had was that they shared transport. When they would send some of them to where the rice came from, that was in a up country of Kenya, in a place called Kirinyaga, and then they would share the transport cost. So they shared a lot of activities. They shared even security costs so that they could make their business worthwhile. So one of the solidarity economies I observed was that of the rice traders in Mombasa. Are there any questions about that?
Mary, did you want to open it up for questions?
Yeah, or do I wait until the end?
It's up to you. It's definitely up to you. There's one question I did have for you. Where did I write it down? Okay, I have the question. Can you define the informal sector again?
The informal sector is small businesses that include traders. It's like the market businesses. Traders who sell secondhand clothes, they sell cabbage, they sell bananas. It's the African market that has evolved into the city. The African market that was existing before colonialism, it evolved into the city, and it started claiming for space. So when the people lost their jobs after structural adjustment, they went back to the informal economy. And the person who defines who came up with the term informal economy is a British anthropologist called John Keith Hart. She is the one who is said to have found these traders in Accra, Ghana, and defined them informal because they were doing different businesses from what the government was and corporations were doing. Then they organize their own systems of rule. The second type of informal economy, solidarity economy I observed is another one for metal workers. Metal workers who make household goods and products for use on the gardens in agriculture. And these people, they have created a system of government where they develop a memorandum of understanding of who should be voted in and who should not be voted in as a way of improving diversity. That is, before the elections are held, they discuss. We have two tribes in Kenya. We are divided into tribes, not into tribes and races, and the dominant tribes in that sector are Luos and Kikuyus. And then what they decide is who should be this and that. And then they decide if one tribe is standing in one election, they should not compete with each other. And in a way, they reduce friction between themselves. So in a way, they are able to manage their economy. And another thing you find is that if you go to these markets, sometimes you find when one is away, the other one will sell for each other. So yes.
I believe Louis has a question.
Yes.
Okay, I'll ask a question. What I'm just admiring is how they do this. I don't think in America we're so individualistic and competitive. I think it would be hard to do that to kind of scale.
Sorry, can you repeat the question for me?
So I'm just interested in the way they form the co-ops. They get together and decide, so they don't compete and help each other. And I can't see that being so common in America. You know.
It is not communism.
No, I'm not saying communism. Well, I'm thinking America is so competitive and individualistic. Well, we do have a few co-ops, but usually they might not agree. They might not agree to get together the way they did. Like, the United States is a very competitive society. And I kind of admire the way they get together.
It is not communism. What they do is that each individual has their own.
No, wait, I'm not saying it's communism. I'm thinking American is so competitive that they don't.
America.
I'm not saying this is communism. It's just people getting together. Communism means rule of the workers, or this is just people getting together, not communism.
Yeah. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just gonna reiterate. I think Luis is trying to say that it's very competitive in America, so we wouldn't have that sense of like community where if one tribe can't sell something, then the other one will. Like it's too. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what Luis is trying to saying, that we're too competitive in America to have that same concept.
Okay, yeah, I understand America is too competitive, but to build cooperation, people can see how they can work together. They can see how they work together. And even when I read like the work of W.E. Du Bois, he talks about the group economies that were existing in places like Dalam. I don't know whether you have read those about those group economies.
No.
Yeah, I read one article, the upbuilding of Durham, where they had group economies and people did different things, but they also did things in common. I know.
What do you say?
I think competition will always be there, but people can also try and work together. That's my hope.
Mm-hmm.
But these people I'm talking about, you know they are at the margins of society. So their only strength is to work together and build cooperatives because they are at the margins.
In America, they don't work together as much. Some groups fight each other.
Yeah.
I like the way you're talking about it now.
Hope that I had a question and I just wanted to say, yeah, it's definitely a tough. It's hard to imagine a similar local informal economy growing in the U.S. in mass, but that's definitely what Ujima in some way we're trying to upend our current capitalistic, kind of economy that only works for very few people. But I did have a question. I know you wanted to take some questions at the end too, but I was just curious, what was the most challenging part with maintaining these networks, if you're aware? Like, what was it that they, collectively had to overcome in order to have this good cooperation in either of the models, the iron worker or the informal?
One of the difficulties that they have to experience is about trust. How do you build trust? And this takes a lot of time. You find that people coming from one area of origin, they will trust each other, but then they have difficulties building trust across other different areas. So what they do is they try to hold meetings regularly, like monthly, others hold weekly, others hold daily evening meetings where they make contributions.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, we can hold on questions and then jump back into them after Mary, you finish your presentation. So you may continue if you want. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Floor is yours.
The other form of solidarity economy I have seen is people pulling finances together. They agree to contribute a monthly contribution or a daily contribution or a weekly contribution. When they contribute like this, the money is saved in a kitty. And after saving in a kitty, it is redistributed to other people and shared and given to one person. And this person is supposed to make a bulk purchase. For example, if they were trading in tomatoes, then if they can trade in tomatoes, one can buy a bulk in tomatoes. Then this is done in a rotational way, and that is what Caroline Hussein has been talking about the roscas, that the women pool resources and then they give to one person or they move on. The other thing is that these women will save the money and make a joint purchase. They can buy a piece of a land or a building, and then they sell it and distribute the money themselves. For example, one of the group that I'm a member of, we contribute $10, the equivalent of $10 a month. And as of today, we have accumulated $37,000.
Wow.
And that $7,000, the committee is deciding to buy a piece of land, and then the money will be redistributed and shared as dividend, and then each one of us can invest in their own project. So these are small, small things that people do to try and solve the problems that they have. Then the other thing they do, apart from joint investment, is when they are celebrating life. For example, if you have a graduation, they'll come to you, to your graduation. If you have a wedding, they'll come to your wedding. If you have a funeral, they'll have that support, because most people don't have like burial insurance. So they take it as a community to support each other, and the way they support each other is by pooling resources. And you remember, I wish to let you know that these things were being done from time immemorial. People had what they used to they would farm on one person farm and move to another person farm, and then, or if a woman delivered, they'll bring water, they'll bring firewood, they'll bring bananas, they'll come to pound maize to make porridge and all that. So these things have been evolved into, to fit in into, they are being evolved to try and as a way of survival and as a way of alternative economies. So this way, they'll be able to solve their problems. Then the last solidarity economy I've observed is another group of farmers who keep cattle in small scale. They have 1 or 2 cows or 3 cows or 4 cows. And because they cannot afford to process the milk, they have gathered together as a cooperative, and they trade, they process the milk together. Initially, they would hire vehicles to go to sell the milk, but that after some time, they realized that they could make more money by processing the milk. So they started processing the milk on their farms. So in this way, they are able to share, to support each other as small-scale farmers to do the work together as small-scale farmers. So what I'm saying is that these people are at the margins of business and society, and they try to work together to build themselves, to thrive and flourish in their own way, because they have been neglected. And as I said at the beginning, I used to ask the questions: are they entrepreneurs or plodding along? And some other people used to call them economies of affection, which have to be dealt with so that progress can be realized. They were being told, they were being called backward economies. They were being told they have to be to be dealt with before countries can develop. But today, what we are seeing now, the government is going to them to tax them because it is realizing that they have quite some money that they have. I understand it is it's difficult to envision the informal economy, but I would propose that one of the things you could do is make a visit to Kenya or to Accra, and you see how people do it. I should have had a picture. A picture of what it's like to trade informally. I think I'll stop there.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you. We can open it up for some more questions. Definitely a lot you covered. A lot of different topics. And I definitely think we should dive into this. So whoever has a question, feel free to jump in. For Mary.
Genoa, should we do in person first and then online, or whoever's ready?
We can do whoever's ready.
Okay, yeah, I got a question for the professor. Just want to make sure that she can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Earlier when you were talking about how governments say that, oh, you know, we want to do away with this economy of affection, you know, the informalized sharing of skill, labors, and resources, in order for a country to be developed, right, in the capitalist sense. But then you say that now they want to tax them. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, and so I wanted to dig into that as well, because like I just want to know more about how workers on the level that you're describing them and documenting this work and practice, how are they circumventing or able to like still hold on to these this communal way of being and living, and also circumventing, you know, the neo-colonial governments, whether it's Kenya or other African nations that you've been describing so far. What are ways that, you know, workers have become clever enough, you know, to make sure that their practices are not being exploited?
Yeah, initially the government thought that the economies of affections should be done with, and they were recommending change. But now they are realizing that these economies of affection have potential. And in fact, our current government was voted in because of its message that it's going to be a hustlers government. It is going to be people at the bottom. And those people came up they voted in the government of the hustler. But now it seems the hustlers government is turning against them and taxing them. And I'm sure they are going to devise ways of agreeing on how to deal with the taxation, because some of like the digital platforms are the ones that exposed their money circulation procedures because they were transferring a lot of money in one of the mobile money transfer, which is called M-Pesa. So they have realized that a lot of transactions take place. And I don't know, that should be my next research topic, to find out how they are coping with these changes that are taking place.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to lift up an earlier part of the conversation. I'll keep it quick, but in the US and maybe other Western nations as well, I know that we have skill sharing through a time bank, and the Boston Ujima Project is a supporter and participant of organizing a time bank. And so when you brought up, like, trying to get around it through the digital way, the time bank is maintained digitally on a local as well as a regional and even a national scale. Is it always successful? The success is measured on a need by need basis. So it's not measured in terms of like how a bank can measure success and profit or another business. But it's as successful as how many hands are on the table, building together. So I just wanted to raise up an example that we have here.
Okay, thank you. Daily?
Does anyone in the room have a question before I go? I'll leave some space.
Daily?
Okay, I could jump in. Yeah, so I believe earlier in the conversation, you were talking about how there were structural adjustments that made it hard for, certain businesses to stay open, things of that nature. Can you give like some examples of like specific structural adjustments that happened? And was it like all because of like the government, or was it like outside factors?
The structural adjustment happened because there was fears that African countries couldn't pay the loans they had received from the World Bank and the IMF.
Mm.
So in order for the African governments to pay for the loans, they were told they have to adjust the structures of their economy. They had to remove the welfare aspects of their economies. They had to remove free medical care. They had to remove free education. They had to cut back on jobs. They had to free their exchange rates. And that's some of those are the things that happened to and many people found themselves jobless. Many people, bank interest rates were increased, so they found themselves jobless, and the only way they could turn was to the informal economy to try and survive.
I have two more questions, just to add on top of that. So like, what are like specific time periods that you're talking about? And then also, were they cutting jobs and like taking away welfare and free educational programs mostly to cut costs for the government so that they're able to pay the loans back? Or was it another reason?
The structural adjustments were between 1980 and 90s.
Okay.
And they were being made so that the governments can pay the loans.
Okay.
Yeah, that they had.
That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have some questions for Mary?
Hey, I wanted to, this is Nat. I wanted to ask Mary if, I know that it was mentioned about trust building and how important it was and how time consuming trust building is. And I wanted to ask if you might be able to go a little bit more into maybe some ways in which to build trust between those who endeavor in this way.
One of the ways that they build trust is by having regular meetings. First of all, you have to be introduced by somebody who knows you very well. Then they have regular meetings where they eat together, they sing together, they fellowship together. So they go to trust building meetings. And now they are even adopting like motivational speakers to come and speak to them about trust building. And the fact that they share in reciprocal relationships, that's also one way of building trust.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Okay. My question is, I guess, around how to engage in an informal economy when there are these notions of like land ownership or like belonging or like belief in statehood and nationality. So I guess like what I'm wondering is how do you understand this balance of national identity, statehood, land ownership, things that are very like antithesis, I feel like, to the informal economy and how people are moving into the informal economy, like that makes sense.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Oh, I can speak in there. Okay. Just in case. I guess I'm wondering about how we have, I think in like I'm Ethiopian, and so in Ethiopia, it's a big thing around like land ownership and people having a power and ability to like own capital. And I feel like that comes in conflict around with the informal economy and what it means to redistribute resources. And so I'm wondering, how do we like understand or challenge or push against these Western ideals of land ownership and like national identity when we're trying to move into an informal solidarity economy. I don't know if that makes more sense.
Okay, there is a big push to adopt the land use system and also transform. And it's a big task that's there, that people are forced to own title deeds. Like in my area, there was what they call the Swinnerton Plan, which subdivided land, entitled land, and gave land titles to people who described themselves as men, and women had no titles to land. So it's not easy, but I think what we can do is to have hope that now, with issues of climate change, as we discuss issues of climate change, we could see the mistakes that we have made in the past and start rectifying them. For example, I saw a caption today that the 20th century took man into space, but 21st century is bringing man down to earth by considering climate change. So I can only say that what we need to have is not to let hope die.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for asking the question, and thank you, Mary, for giving this presentation and answering these questions for our members and our staff. We truly do appreciate you. And if you want to say any last words for us, definitely here's the floor for that.
I wish you all the best. I hope that the baby steps you are making will lead to progress and education. I remember there is a saying I always found: ideas have legs, they move. So keep your ideas, they have legs and they will move. Thank you.